Good morning, everyone.
Good
Good
morning,
morning,
Rabbi.
Rabbi.
We are learning. We're learning Mishnah Eruvin, Perek Zion, chapter 7, Mishnah Yud, Mishnah 10. Okay, so we're continuing our discussion about the Erev Chatzeres and the Shituf Mevuos. The Erev Chatzeres being that even that if you want to carry from a house to the courtyard, from the courtyard to the house, you got to make an Erev, which all the members of the courtyard, deposit food into one house. That gives them all residence for Shabbos in that one house. And therefore the courtyard and the house are considered one domain. You can go from one to the other. And then we've been speaking about Shituf Mevuos, which was where you have a number of courtyards that are open to an alleyway. So if you want to carry from the alleyway to the courtyards or the courtyard to the alleyway, you also do the same kind of process that all the members of the courtyard have donate food or have a portion of food that is stored in one house in one of the courtyards, and that now combines them all together. So now the Mishnah says regarding what you do, what kind of food you use to make the Erev or the Shituf, the Mishnah says, Ba'kol ma'arvin mishtatfin. You can use anything to make the Erev Chatzeres or to make the Shituf Mevuos, chutz min ha'mayim min ha'melach. But you can't use water and you can't use salt. Divrei Rebbe Eliezer, these are the words of Rebbe Eliezer. Now, there's a lot going on in these two lines. Because we're talking about both an Erev and a Shituf. Mm-hmm. Now, the wording of the Mishnah says you can use anything for an Erev or for a Shituf except for water and salt. Now, the truth is that we mentioned this before. When it comes to an Erev, you have to use bread. An Erev Chatzeres must be done with bread. Mm-hmm. A Shituf Mevuos can be done with any food. So if we say you can do with anything except for water and salt, that cannot be going on the case of the Erev Chatzeres, the courtyard Erev, because we know that you can only use bread for that. You're not going to say except for water and salt when you know you can only use bread. So therefore, these words of the Mishnah are not going on the Erev part, but they're going on the Shituf part. The Shituf Mevuos said you can use any food. Nonetheless, you cannot use water and you cannot use salt. These are not considered significant enough foods. You don't make a meal out of water or out of salt. It just wouldn't satiate you. And therefore, so again, let me read here how they explain it here. An Eruvei Tchumen and a Shituf Mevuos both establish a Shabbos residence because a person is considered to dwell where his food is kept, or at least his significant food is kept. Since water and salt do not nourish, they would not be eaten alone as a meal. Therefore, they do not qualify as food for this purpose. So you want to be considered that where my food is, that's my residence, it's got to be a significant food. It's got to be the kind of food you make a meal out of. So being that you don't have salt and water, don't do that, it's not going to help you by the Shituf Mevuos. Now, still, the Mishnah did mention the Erev. It says, Ba'kol ma'arvin, you can use everything for an Erev. So are we just ignoring that part? Are we just ignoring the word Ba'kol when it comes to the Erev? So the Baratanura brings down that that really, again, the wording of the Mishnah itself is going on the Shituf. But the Mishnah, when it says Ba'kol, with everything, you can make an Erev, means to include something that wouldn't be so obvious about an Erev. And that is that when you make your Erev with bread, does it have to be a whole loaf? Or could it be a broken loaf? Forgetting about how much food has to be there, as we've spoken about previously, right? When you give your food, what do you give it? The food that is being used to make Erev Chatzeres, does it have to be a full loaf or full loaves? Or can it just be, some leftover challah from Shabbos, that's already been cut, nobody ate it, and you're going to eat it from last Shabbos, keep it fresh somehow, and you go ahead and you give it. What does it have to be? Does it have to be a full loaf, which is typically considered more significant, or can it be any piece of bread? So according to the Tana, according to this opinion, according to Rebbe Eliezer, which is the first opinion, when the Mishnah says Ba'kol ma'arvin, you can use anything for an Erev, it means you can use any bread, whether it's a full loaf or whether it's just pieces. That's Rebbe Eliezer. Rabbi Yeshua Omer, now, just want to also, I'll get back to this. Rabbi Yeshua Omer, Rabbi Yeshua says, Kikar hu Erev. You need a loaf for an Erev. It's got to be a loaf, complete bread. Afilu mafa sa'ah v'hi prusa. Even if you baked a sa'ah and it's a broken piece. Now, a sa'ah, which is a dry measure, and on the bottom here they explain, a sa'ah equals the volume of 144 average eggs. See, if you made a piece of bread out of that, right, it'd be quite big. Nonetheless, if it's not a complete loaf, it's a broken piece from a huge loaf, you can't use it, Rabbi Shua says. It's got to be a full loaf. Kikar be'isser. Let's say you got a full loaf, but it's the size of an isser. An isser is a small coin. I can't tell you the exact size, but it's an isser is always the example of a small coin. Kikar be'isser, you got a full loaf that's just the size of an isser, v'hu shalim, and it's complete. Marvin, but you can use it for an erev. I don't care how big or how small it is. Rabbi Shua says it's got to be complete. Why does it have to be complete? What's the big deal about complete? So again, complete was considered more significant than a broken piece of bread. So the thing is like this: if you can give a broken piece of bread, right? So some people are going to give a loaf because maybe they don't have any broken bread, and some people are going to give half a loaf. And one guy's going to say, "Hey, I gave a whole loaf, and you only gave a broken loaf. That's not right." So therefore, in order to prevent any kind of fighting, the halacha, Rabbi Shua's halacha is it's got to be a full loaf. I don't care, and we don't make any differentiations. You can have a half a loaf that's the size of a room. It's not going to help you. It's got to be a full loaf. So therefore, that's Rabbi Shua's opinion. And the halacha is like Rabbi Yeshua. It's got to be a complete loaf. When we make an erev chatzeres, right, we use matzahs. Those are full loaves, right? Those are full loaves. Those are baked as individual breads. Okay, so that's the halacha. Now, I think there's something very interesting here that's brought down, and that is, why is it that we've been saying by an erev chatzeres it's got to be bread, but a shatufa mevuis can be any food as long as it's not water or salt? What's the difference? They seemingly doing the same thing. So why is there this difference? So let me read to you the difference how they explained it here. They explained it like this. Regarding a rivei tchumen, it means. No, I'm sorry. Okay, here it is. An eruv chatzeres, however, must be made with bread for the following reason. An eruv chatzeres symbolically joins all the residents of the courtyard into one primary living place, the house where the eruv is placed. Therefore, must be made with bread, because a person's primary living place is determined by his bread, which is his main sustenance. You have to understand, when you're dealing with a chatzer, you're dealing with houses at a chatzer. And we want it to be considered like everyone is in one house. For Shabbos, this is everybody's house. But a house is a primary residence. That's where you live. If you want to be considered through food that this is your primary residence because you want to be in this house, then it's got to be bread, which is the main sustenance of a person. A shituf, on the other hand, joins all the courtyards into one. Since the courtyard is not a person's primary living place, all types of food may be used to join them. So it depends. If you're trying to combine houses, trying to make it everybody's in the same house, so if you want me in the house, it's got to be bread. It's got to be your main sustenance. But if the point is you want all the chatzeres combined into one chatzer, that's what you want. And that's the mechanism. You're trying to make all the chatzeres come together as one. No, a chatzer is a courtyard. A courtyard is used. It's not your main residence. And therefore, any food will suffice to be able to say that, my courtyard for Shabbos is there, as long as some kind of food was contributed to it. Some of my food is there. Okay, have a wonderful day.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Now, with those